Awesome. Oh, thank you everybody for having me here. I'm so excited to talk about our clinical trials for schwannomatosis related pain. I'm biased because I work here at MGH, but I think this is literally the most exciting place in the world to be for researching schwannomatosis related pain, because the two clinical trials. Oh, sorry, I'm from New Jersey. We talk super fast. I'll try to channel some more like, I don't know, Iowa, where do they talk slow? No offense if you're from Iowa here, sorry. Now I'm like paralyzed because I can't talk that slow. My brain is going. But what I wanted to say is I think this is the most exciting place in the world to be for schwannomatosis research, because the two clinical trials I'm going to share with you today are, to our knowledge, the only therapeutic trials specifically for schwannomatosis pain in the world. And so we've already learned so much and have so much more to learn. And of course, before I even start, I want to give credit to all the folks in the room who have been integral parts of these trials. Dr. Scott Plotkin, who is the PI or lead investigator, and Danny Silverman in the back, who many of you might have met, who's our research coordinator, and definitely the person to contact if this intrigues you and you want to sign up. Here. I don't have to tell this audience, I think, that pain is a really high unmet need in schwannomatosis. In research with patients, asking them what's the priority for clinical trials, schwannomatosis patients said chronic pain is their #1 issue. And I should say here, I mean non-NF2 related schwannomatosis, so other forms of schwannomatosis other than the one caused by the NF2 gene. We know that many of our patients have chronic pain, and on that pain scale of 0 to 10, what's your pain? More than half of our patients have pain that's a 5 or higher, what we call moderate to severe pain. We know a little bit about the biology here. There's some evidence that depending in which gene your mutation is in, might influence what kind of pain you have. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of great treatment options for pain. Sometimes folks have pain that's localized to a specific tumor or schwannoma. And when we take that out or operate, it goes away. But unfortunately, no, for a lot of people after surgery, the pain might come back, or you might get another tumor that's painful. So it's not something that will eliminate pain long-term all of the time. And we know, unfortunately, that there's no specific class of medications currently available that has is especially effective for schwannomatosis pain. So, for example, we did a study of the natural history of schwannomatosis pain in 79% or 79 adults. We found that 77% were using some kind of pain medication. And really, people were trying everything all over the map. These are 3 different classes of pain medication: neuropathic meds, NSAIDs, and opioids. And you can see people were taking every combination possible of this, and unfortunately not always working as well as we had hoped. And prior to us starting this research, I'm using the royal we here when I say us, the MGH-NF clinic, there had been no therapeutic clinical trials prior to 2020 for specifically schwannomatosis related pain. So given that there was this limited efficacy of current treatments, we really wanted to explore new clinical trials for schwannomatosis pain. We know that something called nerve growth factor is important in other diseases in the generation and maintenance of pain. And in some of the preclinical work, I think this is led by one of our wonderful lab scientists, Lei Xu, we found elevated levels of this nerve growth factor in schwannomas that had been resected from patients. And so this was the preclinical evidence we needed to look for. Are there drugs targeting nerve growth factor that we might be able to test in schwannomatosis? And so a drug called tanezumab is an investigational antibody that inhibits nerve growth factor that had been studied in a wide variety of other pain conditions. It was developed primarily for other conditions first, but we wanted to test to see if it would be useful in schwannomatosis related pain. So to do this, we had to first design clinical trials, because as I said, there had been no clinical trials for schwannomatosis pain before. And we used a design that's called the delayed start randomization, because we really wanted to balance the science needs of this trial, which is being able to really robustly prove that this medication was working, with our ethical requirements, knowing that people sign up on these studies because they want to try the experimental medication and see if it works. So with this type of study, there's 2 periods. So when you first enter the study, you get randomized to either receive the active drug or get a placebo, which is an inactive pill. You don't know what you're taking, and we don't know either which one you're on, but we can measure what happens to people's pain. And then for the second half of the trial, everybody gets the active medication. So you know for sure that you are getting the active drug. And then we can see very, very robustly here when we compare the drug to placebo, what the effect is. And then we can also continue to see how that drug continues to work and everyone gets a chance to try it. So with that in mind, this is the design of our first clinical trial, which was for tanezumab. And up here, you can see that delayed start randomization. So at first, people come in and either get tanezumab or placebo, and then they come in for a second dose where everyone gets tanezumab. And then we had 6 months of safety follow-up. So just checking in without any treatment to see how you're doing. These were the kind of schedule of visits we had, and you can see a number of these with these stars were just telephone calls to check in on folks. And the primary change here that we're going to hope to analyze is how people's pain changes over the first 8 weeks of treatment. So to be in this study, you had to be an adult with schwannomatosis, a confirmed diagnosis, and have pain that was above a 5 out of 10. Due to some properties of tanezumab, there were some exclusion criteria. So because of the safety concerns of this class of medications, you couldn't have osteoarthritis and you couldn't be on NSAIDs, which was a limitation for a number of folks. But that was because of, just wanting to be safe in the way that tanezumab might interact with other drugs you're taking. Something I forgot to mention is the way that we've designed these trials is that you don't have to come off your existing pain medications to be on. You have to be on a stable dose of what you're taking so that we know that the changes we see aren't due to changes in what medication you're taking, but you don't have to come off if you have pain despite that treatment, if that's something that you want to stay on because you don't want to come off and potentially lose that benefit. It's added here. So the screening process is this part where we are screening people to see if they would be a good fit and they want to sign up on the trial. And this slides are from our former CRC, Jennifer Daw, who many of you might have met, who did a huge amount of this work, identifying subjects and talking to them about the trial. Ultimately, I think it was probably there. I think we started this in October 2020. And we found 52 people who were potentially interested in joining the trial. This is just a breakdown of how we recruited. Many of them were here from Mass General Hospital, but also from other institutions and from our partners at the Children's Tumor Foundation. Unfortunately, only 9 of these folks were able to eventually enroll, which was a little disappointing. I think one of the biggest barriers for this, we had intended to enroll 46. I mean, one of the biggest barriers of this was, as I said, this was 2020, COVID-19, and coming in person was a huge barrier to not only getting the study started originally, but folks not wanting to travel and come in especially before vaccines. So that was a little difficult, but we did analyze kind of what were the problems we had so that we could try to address those as we moved forward. And so some of this is the challenges of recruiting for such a rare disease. There aren't as many people as, say, people with NF1 who are available for trials. We also know for some folks, confirming their diagnosis of schwannomatosis can be rough. We can't find gene changes in everyone, not that you have to know what gene is, but sometimes there's that overlap for having NF2 and we don't know exactly what you have, so you weren't eligible to join the trial. We did learn some lessons about the study design. So there are a lot of folks who were interested in joining, but didn't have high enough pain to be eligible. The time and logistics and travel are obviously a huge burden to come in for a trial multiple times, especially if you don't live here in Boston. And some people didn't want to join because you did have to have that very stable dose of the other medicines you were on, and you would only get tanezumab for a little while. So some people thought, I don't think that's worth it. I want to just stick with the current meds I'm on and be able to tweak those. And then finally, there was some of that drug-specific barriers that I talked about, which were specific to just testing tanezumab, where you couldn't have other conditions, which ruled out actually a surprising number of folks. So the reason I talk about this, and I don't have the actual results yet from the 9 folks who took tanezumab because we didn't enroll as many folks as we hoped. I don't know that the statistics will be as robust, but we're at least going to try to learn what we can from that data. We're analyzing that now, and hopefully, later down the road, we'll be able to share that. But I wanted to share the experience of tanezumab to show how we are going to try to learn from it and improve the next trial that we're opening. So we learned a lot from this clinical trial, being the first clinical trial ever for this indication, and different ways that we're going to measure people's pain during that screening period. We know some people's pain isn't steady. It goes up and down day to day or week to week. And so just because you're in a week with a low pain, we don't want to exclude you, because what if most of the time you have higher pain and would get to come in? Something I'm super excited about is that we're trying to do more decentralized trials, really trying to incorporate telehealth visits and doing surveys online so that you don't have to come into the hospital. And that way we're hoping a lot more people can sign up because they don't have to come to Boston as often. And of course, if you in the audience have other suggestions of what would make you more likely to sign up for any of these trials, please let us know. We are very excited to try to incorporate your feedback and make this a better experience for everyone. And so really, based on this experience, we are so excited to have now be in the process of opening new platform trial for schwannomatosis related pain. I think they're also working on this in the EU as well to really speed the translation to clinic and leverage what we've learned. So this is actually a very similar diagram to what Leah showed you, the platform trial Intuit NF2 for NF2 tumors. It's the same kind of platform design that we're going to use for schwannomatosis related pain. So a platform trial as common eligibility criteria and response criteria. So we have similar people taking each drug, and we measure if each drug is working the same way, which makes the results really comparable. So even though we're not doing a head-to-head, does drug A work better than drug B, because people are so similar and we're using the same similar measurements, we can do a little bit of that comparison, and hopefully, when this is done, kind of have a better sense of which drug is working better. There's also a common infrastructure. So all the back-end work, the regulatory work, the paperwork that we do can hopefully be done in a more streamlined way, because it's one single trial that just adds new drug arms as they're discovered, rather than separate trials that have to be launched one after the other. And so we're working on opening this trial soon. And we have 2 drugs of interest so far. And I'll just say, so the rationale for this trial is to rapidly and efficiently try to screen therapy. So really to just quick identify, does this seem like it works in schwannomatosis, and is it worthy of a bigger study and longer term pain relief? It has the exact same delayed start randomization design that we talked about earlier. So for the first 12 weeks, people will get randomized to either get active drug or placebo. And then for the second 12 weeks, everyone gets the active drug. We're going to enroll 40 people, and 20 people will be allocated for each drug. Similar inclusion criteria. So if you have a diagnosis of schwannomatosis, you're an adult, and you have moderate to severe pain, you would be eligible for our master study, and each drug sub-study might have specific criteria based on just the safety concerns of that drug. And we've already picked, as I mentioned, 2 medications to test. The way that we've been picking the medications so far is we have laboratory models of schwannomatosis. And in these models, you can see that there's increased expression of cytokines. These are just a number of the different cytokines we see that are upregulated in people who have pain. And so based on this, we've picked 2 drugs to start with in the clinical trial. The first one is called siltuximab, which is an IL-6 antibody, so targeting one of these cytokines. It's currently FDA approved for a disease called Castleman's disease, but hasn't been used in NF or schwannomatosis. And it's administered as an IV infusion. And then the second drug that we'll test is called Arenumab. It's also known by the brand name Aimovig, and that's a CGRP receptor antibody, so targeting another one of these cytokines. And that's currently FDA approved for migraine. For this trial, I won't go into detail, but we're really hoping to learn as much as possible about schwannomatosis pain. The primary objective is going to be, does this improve people's pain intensity? We're, of course, also going to be monitoring safety and tolerability. What are the side effects, and can people tolerate this? We're going to do a lot of work on quality of life. So beyond just the pain intensity, how does this affect your physical function, your mood, your social life, through both surveys and qualitative interviews. So sitting down one-on-one to talk with patients. We're going to see if it helps people reduce their other pain medications, do lots of cool science with blood biomarkers, looking at genetic differences. Does your gene change predict which gene drug you're going to respond to, and imaging. So whole body MRI, does what we see on that correlate with who's responding to what drug? So I think there's going to be a lot, hopefully, that we can learn about pain, and hopefully one of these drugs will have a good effect. So thank you to everyone who's participated before in the tanezumab trial. And if you are potentially interested, I'll raise this, in participating in Starfish in the future, please contact Danny Silverman. We would love to have you. And thank you to the whole team here at MGH, our partner institutions, and the different pharmaceutical companies and funding agencies, including the Children's Tumor Foundation, who have given us money to help support this. And with that, I'll move us into questions.